So this is a speaker meeting. Oh, I'm actually a couple of minutes early. Want to talk about anything else? So this is a speaker meeting. Our speaker will share her experience, strength, and hope for approximately 45 minutes. You get a couple more minutes to share. So we ask out of respect for our speaker to please remain seated until she has finished. It is my pleasure to introduce Jenna.
Hello, I'm Jenna. I'm an alcoholic. Is this the camera? Is it always so close? That's horrifying. Okay, let me just adapt to that. My sobriety date is March 14th, 2018. I have a home group, which is a new group, the Broad Highway group on Wednesdays. Little shout out there, 5:30 at the church on Summit. It's a good little group. I have a sponsor who I treasure, and I sponsor other women in this program. And I'm shaking. I didn't expect to be this nervous, but I love sharing at this meeting because Nan asked me to speak, which is kind of a cosmic thing, because when I first moved here, I guess 5 years ago, I came to this meeting when it was at Light and Life Church with a busted up face from getting in a losing fight with pavement, as I tended to do when drunk. And I was just a mess. I was shaking like a leaf. And I identified as a newcomer, and Nan gave me her number. I probably never called you, Nan, in that first few months. I never called anybody. That was my MO. But it gave me such a source of comfort. And when I think of the responsibility pledge, I think of people like you. And that's why I always accept nerves and all, and close-up cam and everything. So it's really an honor and a privilege to be with you guys tonight. I'm going to try like hell to actually get sober and go through some step stuff and like the good stuff rather than just the horror stories, because usually I run out of time. So, but I do spend a good amount of time in the identification part, just because I think that's what kept me coming back to AA all the time, is that I knew that you were like me and that I was like you, and that your solution was this program. And I don't know, I just knew that I wasn't different. I tried to tell myself that I was, that I didn't have what you have, whether that be alcoholism or an understanding of a higher power. I just always wanted to think I was different, but I think in my gut I knew that I wasn't, and that's why I kept coming here. So I spent pretty much the whole of my 20s in and out of AA, treatment, rehabs, detoxes, couch surfing, always kind of in AA, on the fringe of AA. And I think, I used to look back on all that time and feel like that was such a waste, like all those years. And I never got a year in 10 years. And it was like devastating to me. And I think about it now, and I really think that it takes what it takes as far as convincing. And I believe what the book says about, like, if we're not fully convinced that we're not going to do this thing, right? If we don't think we have it, or we don't think we have to do this and there's a different, easier, softer way, then we're not going to stick around. We're not going to put in the effort. And it takes all the effort, like it says, of a drowning man. And I never was convinced enough to give it at all. So it took a lot for me to be convinced of step one, either part of it. Namely, to say that I was an alcoholic, to kind of backtrack a little and give you a little backstory. I grew up in Wisconsin in a little middle-class family. I know, everybody. Like 90% of the room, right? I know. That used to be like a cool thing, like, oh, I'm from Wisconsin. Everyone was, oh, ooh, that's exotic, right? Yeah, not anymore. Everybody, yeah. Good, well, you'll be able to relate to a lot of this stuff. This will be fun. So, I grew up in Wisconsin, and I had three siblings, 4 with myself, 4 kids in our family, and we had a pretty normal upbringing. My money was always tight, but my parents sprung for, my mom really pushed for us to go to Catholic grade school. And, so we had the DARE program and all that stuff, and the fear-mongering of the DARE program worked for most everything. I still to this day have like an intense fear of drugs. That's just not a part of my story, probably from like the horror stories that were in those DARE books. But I didn't have any sort of healthy fear about alcohol. And I think because the examples around me, it seemed like a lighthearted thing. My family drank here and there. My dad was an interesting breed of I don't know if I would say to this day, I don't really know what he was, if he was a functioning alcoholic or not. He had to have beer every night after work, but I never saw him like drunk and belligerent, and he never missed a day of work. And so I used to kind of give him grief about his drinking. I remember when I was young, just because we had an argumentative sort of dynamic, my father and I, all of his life, and so all of my life. And he would kind of talk about how soccer and things like that, our traveling teams were so expensive. And I remember I was like 11, and I like took the price sticker off of one of his beers, and I like ran the numbers and was like, oh, like he's spending, and I brought that to him. And I remember him just being like, stunned. He had no argument. He just told me that he hopes I grow up to be a lawyer. So I haven't fulfilled that wish of his yet. But I just remember it being that, like, kind of an annoying money suck. It was annoying to me that it was such an important priority to him, but it didn't cause any sort of havoc. And so, while I used to kind of look down on my father for his drinking for a lot of years, there got to be a point in my drinking where I just wholly aspired to that, right? To just be able to drink every day and not have all the shit hit the fan, like just keep life together and drink every day like he did. He did it for all of my life with no error. And so, and I knew people like that. So it was confusing, like what is alcoholism? What's an alcoholic? What's, managing drinking and what's not? I kind of had to like answer all those riddles through experience. So I didn't really, in high school, I could take or leave alcohol, like our friend group would go out on the weekends and things. But I liked to be the designated driver because I had saved up all of my after-school work money and bought this little Acura Integra that I thought was pretty cool. And so I liked to drive all my friends around and go to different parties, and drinking just wasn't like an important thing to me. There wasn't like the need for it that would develop later. And so it was kind of a fun thing here and there, but I kind of grew up with the working theory that like if I want something and I work hard and I throw enough self-will at it, I'll get it. So I did that with school and got into the college that I wanted to. I did that with sports and made the teams that I wanted to make. And I kind of developed a whole identity around just what I was able to achieve. And so then, the conditions, it was kind of like a perfect storm. By the time I went to college, I really had no idea who I really was outside of, being this person's girlfriend or these people's friends or this person on this soccer team or whatever. It was just like a normal person that nobody knew. And I had kind of already started down a path I didn't expect. I honestly started kind of having eating disorder behaviors as a cry for attention from my high school boyfriend at the time, just thinking nothing of it. And I didn't know, I didn't know what lied underneath all that. And I quickly got totally consumed. And so what was able to kind of fly under the radar when I was at home, when I went to college, just kind of, like the book says, took off like a ski jump. That's what I think of as, it was unchecked. And so I became really, really sick really, really quickly. And I came home from college for Thanksgiving, and my mom just took one look at me and burst into tears and told me, don't unpack your bags, you're going somewhere. And so that was like my first experience with treatment, was for eating disorders. And I went in and out of treatment for that. I lost semesters of school to go in and out of treatment, and I, for some reason, was able to see that this was a losing game, that I was losing semesters at school, and it was messing up my plans, and that I just, I needed to let it go, but I didn't really know how. But I was at this enormous party school at Madison, and so it just kind of, it was a seamless transition, right? Like I got back from treatment from eating disorders, and I just went out with all the partiers, and I had maybe a semester where it was like normal, maybe, in that realm, right? Like in the University of Wisconsin-Madison realm of normal drinking for like a semester at best. And then it was like pre-gaming by myself, hiding alcohol in my dorm room from nobody. Like I think I just had that intuitive, like people nod their heads with that because we have that like intuitive, like something is wrong with the way I'm treating alcohol. Like I know something's amiss here and I'm ashamed of it. Like that just knowing. And I started to hide and lie about alcohol all the time, and it was becoming this big like closet secret. I had seasons in my early 20s where I was like physically dependent on alcohol and would have withdrawal seizures that were really scary. I remember going into an exam, right, and I was always trying to find the perfect system of like how much to drink to not feel like shit but still be able to like sort of function a little bit. And I had a final exam, and I thought I had hit the sweet spot, but I didn't drink enough apparently. And I walked in, and he hands out those writing booklets, and it was a written exam. And I thought, like I'm not gonna be able to write all this, you know. And I had to leave halfway through the exam because I physically was shaking so hard I couldn't write. And I could have like parts of my story where I'm drinking so alcoholically and so obviously, and I'm in and out of hospitals, and things are not well, and it's apparent, right? It should be apparent that I'm an alcoholic. These are not like normal things that people go through if they're not an alcoholic. But at the time, the only honesty with self that I could muster at that time was that, like, I can say I'm drinking alcoholically now, right? Like, this is a thing I do now because I somehow, you know, I went to high school and had this charmed life, and then I woke up in college in this nightmare, and I can't get out of it, you know, and I'm just a little lost. Maybe I'm not transitioning into adulthood properly, but I'll grow up and I'll mature and I won't have these problems, and I'll drink, you know, like a normal person. And so I kind of just thought I needed to like treat the circumstance so that I don't drink like this anymore. And so, you know, that's kind of the part of like the other half of step one that was difficult for me to understand. I just thought, not only do I need to manage alcohol, but if I just manage these other parts of my life, then I wouldn't need alcohol, and I could just do that, you know? So I tried to pour my energy into managing all these other things that I thought would make me a well and happy person who didn't depend on alcohol. So I tried to find the man, and there was always a victim. I had a lot of long-term relationships, which to this day blows my mind that any of them stuck around as long as they did. Really is. They're good men. I feel bad to this day. They were good guys, but I always picked the ones that like didn't know anything about alcoholism. So, you know, they meet me, I appear normal at first blush, and then, you know, somewhere down the line, after they're already trapped or whatever, they're like, oh my God, you have a serious problem that I don't know how to fix, you know? And so I always pick the ones that would be like, maybe you just need to drink beer. Like, we'll just drink beer. Or we'll just go out on the weekends. And I'm like, yeah, that's what we need to do. Like, I'm so glad I have you around, you know, to talk some sense into me. And like, I knew, you know, those are the things that are like on my fourth step. That's like, you know, I went through my first fourth step and I thought like, I really didn't hurt anybody. Like, you know, I had amicable breakups. I mean, if you call it amicable, then being like, in tears, like, I love you, but like, I don't know what's wrong with you and I can't fix it, like, you know, devastated. But there weren't blow up fights. So in my mind, I didn't really do that much harm, but to, I guess, make someone feel their own powerlessness to that level of, you know, loving someone and not being able to fix something gravely wrong with them and just having to watch the train wreck unfold is probably pretty painful. So I think about that when I try to, you know, justify that maybe I didn't do that much harm. There was plenty of harm done in those relationships. So, you know, I did those things. I had long-term relationships, and that didn't work. I still drank. I got the ultimatums in relationships and all that stuff, and those didn't work. I thought that I just need to, like, grow up and get a career, right? Because I'm a driven person. And so I would go from job to job, and I did finally at one point in time land a job that I would consider like, you know, my dream job. Like I loved everything about it. But I drank it away, and it's funny, like I knew every time I was driving to work to that job, it was like clear blue skies, but like just the doom, right? Like there was always the doom because I had ridden this roller coaster so long that it was like the highs were great, but like I stopped enjoying them because I just knew, you know, like I wasn't doing what I needed to do, and I was just waiting for the coaster to tip, you know, always. And I really didn't feel towards, you know, after so many years of relapse, I really kind of stopped hoping and dreaming and trying and thinking that it was ever going to be different. It kind of just got to the point where it was like, I'm just gonna like hang around AA and just try to keep the consequences at bay, or keep the shitstorm just bearable enough to like survive, and that'll be enough, I guess, you know. I did all the things, and I think it took 10 years of doing all that stuff. I had my first child when I was 28 in 2014, my daughter. And I remember when I got pregnant with her, and I felt like I was like a teenager, like, oh my God, what do I do with like, I can't take care of a person, you know, like, I'm a mess. But at the same time, I felt this like relief, like, oh, now, you know, hallelujah, now I won't drink anymore, and this whole nightmare will be over, because I'm going to be a grown-up mom and respond, you know, thank God, you know, this is what I've been waiting for. You know, I'm putting this person who's not even here yet in charge of like my entire well-being. She's going to make me whole and make everything, you know, better. And it was confusing, because I had her and I loved her like more than I didn't even know it was possible to love something. And I'm a pretty loving and affectionate person, but it blew my mind, you know. And so I thought certain that was the thing. And I thought, well, I'll work a normal 9-to-5 job, a big girl job, and I'll raise her, and I'll have wine at the end of the night after I put her to bed, and like it'll be normal. And the craziest thing is after all those like you know, alcohol withdrawal, seizures, and hiding alcohol, I got 3 DUIs when I lived in California, like back to back. I lost my license for 3 years. I've had all these horror stories, clearly alcoholic, but like I would still try those things, and the damnedest thing is that it would work for a while. Like it would work, and then I'd be like, oh my God, I wasted all that time in AA thinking I was an alcoholic. When like this was all, you know, oh my God, how silly of me. Like I really thought that. And it was so crazy. I was like so relieved, and then slowly like 5 o'clock would come earlier, and then like occasionally I'd have a rough day and I'd, you know, drink my lunch. And then slowly, you know, over time, it just got worse and worse, and then all of a sudden I'm drinking around the clock. Like this wasn't supposed to happen. Like everything was working out fine. Like I thought I didn't have alcoholism, you know. And that, you know, it kind of got taken to a whole nother level when I became a mom, because not only was there like the horrible like disappointment that like I thought this was going to finally rescue me from this alcoholic hell, and it has not. You know, that disappointment mixed also now with this like, this person is like perfection, and they depend on me, and I'm me, who's like, in my mind, this alcoholic piece of trash, you know, and this is who she's stuck with, and I don't know how to be anything better or different, you know. And the guilt was rough, and that became like the new thing to try to like drink away. I used to just, I don't know, I drank for a lot of reasons, good, bad, and different, but the guilt was just so much. And then of course you drink, and the more guilt you feel because you're choosing, you know, alcohol over a kid, was really unbearable, and I couldn't understand that. I think maybe that was like the first occasion. It took me a while, actually. It's only in hindsight that I can look back and say like, that's alcoholism in a nutshell, right? Like to love somebody so much that you would like jump in front of a bus for them, but you won't put down a drink for them. Like that's alcoholism, you know, like that's what you're up against. I see that now, but at the time I just thought, whatever, alcohol, eating disorders, anxiety, whatever my problem is, like I am a dysfunctional like something is deeply wrong with me that I'm this kind of mother, you know, and I just turned it into a shame and guilt thing. You know, I thought it convinced me that I was a bad person rather than I was an alcoholic, you know. But fortunately, you know, through sponsorship in these meetings, I eventually found a new perspective. And if anyone has guilt about anything like that, or any guilt at all, and it feels like it's the weight of the world and it's as permanent as the air you breathe, it's really not. I really didn't think that would ever even get slightly better, let alone go away. And, you know, occasionally I have those thoughts, and it kind of like hits me in the gut a little bit. But then, you know, all I have is today, and I look at the way that I parent my children today, and I know that I'm able to show up for them and be present thanks to this program, and the guilt kind of washes away, you know. I spent a lot of time too just on the subject of children, thinking that like, you know, this whole higher power thing, that there must be some kind of like glitch in the matrix somewhere where like, you know, some God looked at my life and the things that I'm doing and the train wreck I'd become, and then said, here's these beautiful little lives, like I trust you with them. And it's like, that can't be right, right? And I thought that meant like whatever God is all screwed up, and self-pity is one of my character defects that I curl up with sometimes. But I really thought that, and now I look at it like I don't understand what God sees and any of that stuff, but I can see that it sees more in me and in fellow man and the world and everything than I see, and I just try to live up to what He gives me every day. I don't ask why so much anymore. I just try to show up and say thanks. Thanks for these kids, and I'll do the best I can today for them. I don't know why, but okay. Your will. I don't know. It's kind of cosmic to be speaking at this meeting too, because I remember last year I spoke, and we had just found out I was pregnant, and I remember that was the only thought in my head because it was such huge, bizarre news, and so it was just in my head, and I kept thinking I'm going to blurt out like I'm pregnant in the middle of speaking. I don't think that I did, but that's just funny. That's another blessing, Now I have a 4-month-old, healthy, happy, perfect little babe at home. I have three kids now, which is just So to try and speed up and get to all the miracles and things, I'll try to weave it into some of the horror story things too. But I spent a lot of time in and out. I had some moments where like having my daughter and then that not fixing things. I had some moments where I really saw the face of alcohol. I saw it for what it was, alcoholism, but it didn't always last. I remember I woke up one time in a hospital bed in Milwaukee, and my mom was there, and she wasn't supposed to be. She was living in Florida at the time, and I was like, what is going on? And it was just a Tuesday. I was just drinking like I do, and I came in, I guess, with a 0.4, and my roommate couldn't wake me up. And they were shocked that I wasn't wet brain or, dead in a coma, something, anything. Instead, I just came to with this bitch attitude of I want to get out of here. What am I doing here? Why are you crying, Mom? Just a disaster. And I'm sure I drank the next day, and my mom was just weeping, you could have died, wanting me to understand. And I guess I had moments later. I did kind of develop fear of drinking alone, because I thought, that's just me drinking to not feel like shit. So if I have to drink a fatal amount of alcohol to be okay, this is just a roulette, really. That was frightening. I didn't know the solution to that riddle. Lots of detox and rehab. So, I understand the rehab thing. I had moments where I needed to just kind of be pulled out of the cycle and removed from my environment, and to do that. But I kind of came to depend on rehab to keep me well, and then it became I'd be sober in a rehab for a few months, and then I'd get out and I wouldn't do any of the things I knew to do. And I don't know, I was always drunk within a week of leaving treatment, no matter how long I was there. And it wasn't a permanent solution for me. I spent a lot of time trying to dodge the whole God thing. And I'm not agnostic. I guess I'm not agnostic. I'm certainly not atheist. I think I just really dodged it because my mind doesn't work that way, and I just wanted to kind of play to my strong suits, And I don't know, I would walk into meetings and people would talk about, finding a higher power, and I don't know, I just couldn't grasp that for myself. I'm very practical minded, and I don't know, I've had a neat journey with seeking to understand God as best I can, and trying to be comfortable with the not knowing. I don't know, I liken it to you guys are from Wisconsin. Here, this one will work. So we went, when we were little kids, we used to go to Wisconsin Dells, and that was our big family vacation, a long weekend in the Wisconsin Dells. It's a tourist hub of junk in Wisconsin somewhere. I love it, though. It'll always be nostalgic to me. But we used to go there, and we'd draw straws to pick who gets to pick what we're doing that night or whatever. And I remember my little brother was he had a phase where he was into magic, and he picked a magic show, and we all groaned. But we went to this magic show, and my dad is kind of he was kind of like a character on a sitcom. He got a kick out of telling us things that we were probably too young to know. Like he would scramble eggs in the morning and be like, "It's baby chickens," and we're like, "Oh," like that was my dad. So we went to a magic show, and my dad would spoil all the tricks. Like, "Oh, I know what he's doing. He's just blah blah," and we're like, "Oh," you know. And my mom would shoot him a look, like, "Really," you know. But I've kind of like come to like that analogy with God, like. Part of the magic and the mystique, like, I don't know how people do magic tricks. I'm not a magician, but, you know, that's the fun and the thrill of going to a magic show, is like just to be amazed and to not know how it works, you know. And that's kind of where I'm at with God these days. Like, I really don't know how it works, but I'm starting to figure out what works, you know, by watching other people. And then I do what they do, and then I get the same great results in my own life. And I just had to abandon, I had a lot of preconceived ideas about alcoholism, about God, about everything. And one of them, you know, I started to just kind of wonder, like, what if I've had this, like, totally wrong playbook, like, all my life, you know? And I think that the world operates on, like, self-will and ego and all these things. And, like, what if that's all wrong? And it's really all this, like, spiritual realm in the background. And, like, what if, you know? And I only started to believe that because I had started, the veil was starting to kind of come off about alcoholism and other things. Like, I had heard so many things when I got here that I just flat did not believe. Like, even I remember people, like, taking chips, like 30-year chips, and they'd say, like, "I'm so-and-so, I'm an alcoholic, I have 30 years. And I'm like, that does not make any sense. Like, you haven't had a drink in 30 years. You're not an alcoholic, you know? That one took forever. I was just like, that doesn't, okay, whatever you say, Bob, you know? But I totally did not understand that at all. But then I would hear stories, right? Like, you'd hear stories about so-and-so comes, like, you know, stumbling back in, and I had 10 years sober, and then I went back out, and, you know, I'm almost dead. I lost a leg, but here I am. And you're like, oh my God, like, is it true? You know, I never believed that. I thought if you managed to keep your shit together for 10 years, you were probably okay, you know, like, you could probably figure it out. But I started to see that happen in other people, and it was like, maybe that's true, you know? Maybe that's what alcoholism is, and it's kind of like the magic show. I don't really understand how alcoholism really works. When you think about it, it's a crazy thing. When I first got here, it had seemed to me that, like, I could drink occasionally, I could take or leave a drink, and then somewhere there was an invisible line, and I stepped over it, and try like hell, you know, like DeLorean, time machine, whatever, you're not getting back over that line. And I'm like, that does not make any sense. Can't I just figure out where the misstep was, you know, tweak this or that in my life, and then I should be able to go back there. And, you know, all this stuff took a couple years of that 10-year stretch of figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and what is alcoholism, you know, and why do we need a spiritual solution. You know, that took some time. I had some time sober before I really, like, dove in to two, and thank God for that, because that was a whole other myth that was explained to me. I thought, okay, you come in, you dry out, you get sober, and then, like, something happens, I don't know, you say some prayers, and then you have this, like, white lightning moment, and then you're like a God person now, and, like, and then it's all easy, and then you know how to do the rest of the steps once you've figured out God and you have that squared away. And I never could figure out God, so I never really got past two, because I hadn't figured it out yet, you know? Like, I thought I just needed to think some more and, you know, I don't know, try different philosophies. I was always reading books, you know, like, maybe Buddhism is the thing, like, that's the thing. And there's some good material, like, different, you know, theologies and all sorts of different spiritual practices, and all of it's helpful. But, like, the point of it was just to seek, right? It wasn't, like, to figure it all out. It was just, my sponsor always called it, like, the discipline. Like, I'd be like, I'm praying, I don't feel anything. She's like, okay, but you're praying. I'm like, yeah, okay. Well, then you're practicing the discipline. And, like, they would say that all the time. My sponsor and her husband are both in the program. And they would say that about, like, patience, and, like, practicing patience brings patience. Practicing acceptance brings, you know, all these things are practice. We don't just get them because we pray for them. We pray and we keep practicing. It's the discipline of all these things that slowly over time we see results. And that kind of became true for me. Just practicing these things that I wasn't really sure how they were going to work, you know, and I used to come into meetings, and of course, like, every time that the roller coaster went down, like there would just be debris for miles, right? Like, I'm broke, I don't know where my car is, like I've lost a license, I've got creditors calling, like things are aflame everywhere, and people would be like, just pray for somebody and like call a friend in AA and like try to help them. And I'm like, that doesn't help any of those problems, Like, what are you talking about? That doesn't help anything. That does not put money in my bank account. I hated that. And it's only through like actual experience. Those were one of the things that had to be proven true to me. Because I have such a, I don't know if it was from my upbringing, money was tight. And so I always had fear of financial insecurity, even when things were okay. And for a long time into my sobriety, I still held on to that. I thought that worrying about money and saving money and all that stuff was my business, and that God doesn't know how to do that stuff because he's God and he has bigger fish to fry, I guess. I don't know. That was just one of those things. I'd turn everything else over. But I'll figure out the money stuff. And by figure out, I meant like I'll worry about it obsessively, constantly, and let it torment my every thought. And my sponsor finally explained to me that like all these steps are in order, and like step 3, we think all these steps are so that like we can have a great life, and that's a nice byproduct, right? Like we do these steps and then we live good lives and our lives aren't in the toilet anymore, and that's great. But like also it makes us of better use to our fellows, and we're better able to see God's will, who then puts us on the path to help others. Like all of it comes full circle to like connect us with God and help others, and that's all of it is about. And so me sitting around like staring at my bank account and trying to figure out how to like manifest more money and all these different things is a lot of energy that could be better spent figuring out what God's will is, asking God what his will is for me, and helping other people in some way. When I'm trying to solve all my own problems, I'm thinking about me and only me, and those problems just don't get solved. And I thought I was a pretty good problem solver. And I like to plan things, but like none of those skills, it's like I have a whole resume for like the wrong job, right? Like I came to AA, like I'm a great planner and manager, and like I've got lots of drive and self-will, and everybody was like, yeah, that's no good here. Like, no, we don't need your kind, like that won't work here. And that was like such a blow, like, oh my God, that's the only tool in my arsenal, right? Is like obsessive thought and like over ambition for naught. But it's true, like the biggest things that have like helped me on my way in sobriety and opened up the doors and made the miracles all happen are like when I can just like really try to just kind of sit on my hands, be still, listen. And when I can't seem to do that, the helping other people, I found for me, is what really just quiets my own ego enough to see other things or see things a different way. So I see things a different way and different opportunities come. So this past year I was like worrying a lot about money that I'd saved for something, and my sponsor was like, we just pray about it. Like, did you let it go? And I'm like, no, I really didn't. I really had never fully let that go. And she like had me say a prayer and let it all go. And I really did. I was like, I worry about this constantly, and I know it's a waste of energy, and I'm not getting any results anyways. So like, here's this thing, and whatever you do with it, you do with it in your own time, whatever. But like, I won't worry about it anymore. I'm just gonna let you have it, and then you can direct my energy elsewhere. And the problem didn't get solved instantly, but I instantly felt like a huge relief. And I had like, it was like I just drank like 10 cups of coffee, like every day all of a sudden, just more positive energy. I just felt different and good and relieved. And then sure enough, the results came, like doors were opened, and these things that I had tried desperately to figure out and maneuver were just suddenly solved, magically solved, is really like how I would put it, miraculously or magically solved. All the best things in my sobriety have really come from me getting out of the way. And I know what that feels like now. Like, I know that there's going to be that like instant pull back where I'm not going to trust and I'm going to want to still do it my way. And like, it's going to be a little ugly for a minute. And then I let go, and then I just feel like this relief. And the way my life has been since getting sober, really, but mostly like after a year sober, things really just started to take off. I think the willingness was there, and then the willingness to be able to see where God might be in my life just expanded the horizons. And all of a sudden it was everywhere all the time. And I don't know, like the same landscape, but totally different. And I felt kind of like I had been swimming upstream, like desperately, like a fast current trying to swim upstream. And occasionally I could get ahead and then I'd wear out and I'd float back downstream. Life had just kind of been like that. And in the last year and a half, the things that have happened, the last 2 years really, it's been like one thing after another, and it's felt like I'm not doing anything. I'm just like sitting still and letting the current go. Like, okay, God, where do you want me? Okay, I'm just going to be still and go, And in that time, all these miraculous things have happened. I left a relationship with the father of my 2 girls, which was the right thing to do, but it was a difficult thing to do because I had always had a babysitter, right? Like I thought I'd be at least alive. And so I needed somebody to clean up my messes and co-sign my bullshit is really what I needed. And so to suddenly grow into a position where I didn't need that was a new and rare thing, and to actually genuinely want like a partner, not somebody to save me, just somebody to meet me halfway, and help me to be accountable on things was a totally new phenomenon. I didn't want anything to do with that in the past. And I moved out of our house and into a place of my own, which doesn't sound like a big thing because I'm in my mid-30s, right? Like most people have done that before, but I had not. I had shared a room with my sister my whole life when we were growing up. And the year she left for college was the year I went nuts, so clearly I didn't handle that very well. And then I always had roommates or was always in sober livings with groups of people, and I just felt safe that way. Like I couldn't do that much damage if someone was around to, stop me. So I remember like the first week or so in that apartment or that house just being like, oh my God, like I had just like terrorizing panic that I was just going to drink it all away. And like I have these kids and I have to pay all the bills. Like I can't get drunk, but just that fear. And it was like, it took some time to like remember, like I still have all these different tools now that I've acquired. Like I'm not alone. I'm never alone. I don't need to give in to that kind of fear. I think the fear is kind of what kept me going back out. The fear of like, I always had the fear that the other shoe's going to drop. And so I would get sick of waiting for it to drop and the anxiety of that and just make it, make it all crumble. And that's gone away. I also have gotten engaged to a nice fellow in AA, which I thought sounded like a nightmare. Like I would not want an AA man to like call me on my, stuff, but that's really not what it is. And like, that's the beauty of it. That was just the perceived, notion I had going into things like that. But really what it's been is like, what all my relationships in sobriety have been just people that God's put there to bring me closer to Him so that I can better do His will and be there for other people, like the whole full circle thing again. That's all that is like He helps bring me closer to my higher power, so I can be there to love, our children and our friends and show up, when someone needs a hand in AA. It's been a complementary part to my spirituality, and like that's the same with like friends in AA and everything too. It just blows my mind, the people that I have in my life now. And this baby who's wonderful, unexpected and wonderful. That's been a whole, life is just full of surprises. Like, I'm not the kind of person who likes surprises typically, but I've become that kind of person in sobriety because it's never my plan, right? It's often like the total opposite of what I thought I wanted and how I wanted things to look. But it's never been disappointing. It's always been like way beyond, like way beyond my dreams. I can't even, that job that I loved so much that I drank away, I was working all the time and I was hardly ever able to be home because I just switch one thing for another all the time, right? If I'm not working all the time, I'm drinking, it's just one thing. It always had to be something before I had a spiritual solution, something to like focus the energy on. And because I drank that job away and was awfully upset about that for a long period of time into a little bit of sobriety, but I have a job now where I work for a lovely couple in AA who are like family to me. They treat me like family. I feel appreciated every day. I feel like I do meaningful social work. And also, I work from home, so I'm able to literally be there every second of every day with these kids, which is sometimes maddening, but more often than not, a huge blessing, that I don't have to miss anything. And that wouldn't have been possible. I probably honestly wouldn't have even had more kids, having the other job that I was so consumed with. So it's all these things where it's like, you think this is the end of the world, right? Like, this has got to be the worst thing to ever happen to me. And if you stick around and keep seeking God's will, like, the plan will all make sense. It's not going to be your plan or my plan, but that plan, whose ever plan, whatever's plan, is going to be way better than anything. I guess I have a few more minutes. I'll share. Is that what, 10-2, 5-2, somewhere in between? Okay. I'll share one profound spiritual experience. I guess it's kind of a downer to go out on, but it's not really a downer, I guess. But I had a lot of fear about facing big things because when I got sober, I really hadn't had any huge life things happen to me, right? Like, I hadn't lost anybody, nobody had died. I didn't, nothing that wasn't my own wreckage that I had created. So when I was about a year and a half sober, my dad called to say that he had had a lot of health problems over the years, and he had an infection in his heart, and they were trying antibiotics as a last resort, and it didn't work. And so he knew that the end was coming, and so he called to have me come and say goodbye to him. And I remember when he called and said, can you come and say goodbye? And I told him, I said, I can't. And he said, why, work? Or I said, no, I just can't. I'm not the kind of person that can face that kind of stuff. I cower at any kind of confrontation or difficult I can't do that. I don't know how I'll do that, I think is what I told him. And he's like, well, you just will. And lots of counsel from people in AA, and I was able to not only just go and be there, which sounded terrifying to me, but hold his hand and be there when he passed away, and to know that he was at peace, and all of our tumultuous relationship and everything had long since been mended thanks to the steps and being able to make amends to him before he passed. Thank God for that. But it was such a spiritual thing because he was at peace, and we all just felt the knowing, I guess, is the only way to describe it, an intuition that he's okay and everything's okay. And he knew that I was okay, which is I think all he ever wanted all those years I was drinking, was just to know that I was going to be okay, and so to say that really difficult thing was such a big spiritual experience. I walked away from that being I know now. I wasn't sure, but I know now, that there's something. I don't know what it is. I still don't have that figured out, but I'm convinced now, and I'm convinced that it's working in my life. I used to just think it was making nice happy endings for everybody in AA's life, but I'm convinced now. I don't know how it works, but I know that it does. So I just keep showing up here to get instruction is really what I do, to be told, because sometimes my head will still tell me that there's better ideas out there, there's easier ways. Maybe I've got things under control now, but I know that there's really no such thing as the happy ending in AA, right? We just keep showing up and the miracles keep happening. And so I'm going to keep showing up so I can show up for others in my life, and I'm really thankful to be here with you all. So if you're new, just stay, and like they say at magic shows, just prepare to be amazed. So that's all I got. Thanks, guys.
Wow, I had the chills there. I did. That was really good. Let's thank her one more time.